Good morning, Horizon. For my Advent devotional, I've chosen Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48. Love your enemies. And this is an especially challenging section for me, in that I find it very easy to love those who love me and quite difficult to love those who don't love me. So I'm going to read the text, verse 43. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So the first couple verses was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I find it very easy to love my neighbor, and I also find it very easy to hate my enemies. But I don't really strongly identify with any enemies. But as I think about it, as I walk down the street and drive around town, I see people that I don't really want anything to do with. And I know that that's not what God's looking for from me and for all of us. So it's difficult to love those who I don't really identify with and want to be around. And then in verse 45, he says, he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. I don't really get that, but I understand that God is loving to all of us and all of his children, and I am called to be like him. As it says in verse 48, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. I don't think I'm ever going to be perfect, but I'm striving to be more like him. And also in verse 46, Jesus says, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? And this gets me especially because it's really easy to love people who love me. And that's, I think, very natural. We are being called, however, to love those who don't necessarily love us. And that's a hard one for me, because I really like being liked, and I don't like being not liked. So, but this is a very good section for me to examine myself and think about my posture towards those who don't look like me, act like me, agree with me. So I really think this is a good section to look at and think about how I respond to those who aren't like me and don't necessarily like me, and that I don't necessarily like. So it's just good to think about, and I'm really hoping that I can be more like Jesus in this way. Grace and peace to you all. Thank you.